When the 34-year-old silverback gorilla refused to eat for 9 days straight, the veterinarians at Riverside Sanctuary prepared for the worst. But when they called his keeper from 8 years ago, what the dying gorilla did the moment he saw her left the entire staff unable to hold back their tears. Before you watch, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss another touching story like this one. And write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Dr. Patricia Chen stood outside Kondo's enclosure, her clipboard trembling in her hands. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the massive silverback lying motionless on a bed of straw, his once powerful chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. 9 days. 9 days without a single bite of food. His organs were starting to shut down. Behind her, rapid footsteps echoed through the corridor. Rebecca Morrison burst through the staff entrance, her hair disheveled from the overnight flight, dark circles under her eyes, a small overnight bag still clutched in her hand. "How is he?" Rebecca asked breathlessly, though the answer was written clearly on Dr. Chen's face. "We're out of time," the veterinarian said quietly. "His heart is failing. At 34 years old, with this level of starvation, his body can't take much more. I'd say hours, maybe less." Rebecca pressed her hand against the glass, tears already streaming down her face. Kondo lay in the far corner, barely visible in the shadows. His magnificent silver back, once gleaming and powerful, looked dull and lifeless. She hadn't seen him in 8 years. Not since the day she'd retired and moved to Colorado to care for her aging mother. She'd wanted to visit, had planned to so many times, but life kept getting in the way. There was always a reason to postpone. Now she was out of time. "Can I go in?" Rebecca asked. Dr. Chen hesitated. Normally, we'd never allow it, but given his condition and your history with him, she nodded slowly. "Just please be careful. Even weakened, he's still a 380-pound gorilla." "I know him better than anyone," Rebecca said softly. Marcus, the head keeper, unlocked the keeper entrance with shaking hands. "The other gorillas have been moved to the adjacent habitat. You'll be alone with him. We'll be watching through the cameras." Rebecca stepped through the door into the enclosure. The morning air was cool and damp. Birds sang in the trees along the perimeter. Under different circumstances, it would have been peaceful. Rebecca moved slowly across the grass, her footsteps quiet. She could see Kondo more clearly now. His eyes were closed, his breathing so shallow she could barely detect the rise and fall of his chest. "Kondo," she called softly. "Kondo, it's me. It's Rebecca." No response. Not even a twitch of his ear. Rebecca's heart ached as she knelt beside him in the straw. Up close, she could see how much he'd deteriorated. His fur was matted in places. His face, once so expressive and intelligent, looked gaunt and empty. She reached out slowly and placed her hand on his shoulder. His skin was warm, but she could feel his bones more prominently than she remembered. "I'm so sorry I stayed away so long," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Still nothing. Behind the observation glass, Marcus and Dr. Chen watched in tense silence. Several other staff members had gathered, drawn by word that Rebecca had returned. "He's not responding," one young keeper whispered. "Give her time," Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. Minutes passed. Rebecca stayed kneeling beside Kondo, her hand on his shoulder, willing him to respond. Behind the glass, staff members shifted uncomfortably. "His vitals haven't changed," Dr. Chen said quietly through the speaker. "I'm not sure he's even conscious anymore." Rebecca felt panic rising. She'd crossed the country believing her presence would reach him. But what if 8 years had been too long? What if he'd forgotten her? "Please," she whispered, pressing her forehead against his shoulder. "Please, Kondo, I'm here." Nothing. Then she remembered the song. In the enclosure, Rebecca closed her eyes and began to sing. It was a simple melody, wordless and soft. A lullaby she used to hum to Kondo when he was young and frightened, still traumatized from losing his mother to poachers. She'd sung it to him hundreds of times during those early years, during thunderstorms that scared him, during medical checkups that stressed him, during quiet evenings when he just needed comfort. Her voice wavered with emotion, but she pushed through, filling the enclosure with the gentle, familiar tune. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Kondo's ear twitched. Rebecca's heart leaped. She kept singing, louder now, more confident. Kondo's eyes fluttered. Once, twice, then slowly, painfully, they opened. At first, his gaze was unfocused, drifting aimlessly across the enclosure as if he didn't know where he was, but then his eyes found Rebecca's face, and something changed. His pupils dilated, his breath caught. His entire body went rigid with sudden awareness. "Hi, baby," Rebecca whispered through her tears. "I'm here. I'm right here." Kondo stared at her for what felt like an eternity. His eyes moved across her face, studying every detail as if trying to confirm she was real. Then he made a sound, a low, guttural vocalization that started deep in his chest and rose into something that sounded almost like a question. "Yes," Rebecca said, understanding. "Yes, it's really me." What happened next would be talked about at the sanctuary for years to come. Kondo, who hadn't moved in 6 hours, who Dr. Chen had said was within hours of death, began to shift. Slowly, agonizingly, he rolled onto his chest. His arms trembled with the effort of supporting his weight. "Kondo, no," Rebecca said, alarmed. "Don't. You don't have to." But he was already rising. It took him nearly 2 minutes to get to his feet, each movement accompanied by visible strain. Behind the glass, the staff watched in stunned silence. "That's impossible," Dr. Chen breathed. "He shouldn't have the strength." But Kondo was standing, swaying slightly, his legs unsteady beneath him, but standing. He looked at Rebecca with such intensity it took her breath away. Then he turned and began to walk, not toward her, away from her. Rebecca's heart sank. Had she been wrong? Did he not want her here after all? But then she saw where he was heading, the ancient oak tree on the eastern side of the enclosure. The same tree where she used to hide treats for him during enrichment sessions, where they'd sat together countless times over the years. Kondo reached the tree and, with tremendous effort, knelt at its base. He began to dig. The staff in the observation room exchanged confused glances. "What's he doing?" someone asked.
Hello everyone, a quick but important update. Keeping this channel alive requires a lot of time and real production costs. Unfortunately, YouTube has stopped funding our stories. To ensure that I can continue creating them for you, I've set up a safe community page where you can support my work directly. By joining today, you will get early access to our upcoming videos, exclusive stories, and 100% ad-free viewing. You can find the link in the description and pinned in the first comment below. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Rebecca stood slowly, watching in wonder as Kondo dug deeper into the soft earth at the tree's base. His movements were slow and deliberate despite his weakness. After nearly a minute, he stopped. He reached into the hole he'd created and pulled something out. Stones. Small, smooth river stones in various colors: blue, white, amber, rose. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth as recognition hit her like a physical blow. She'd given him those stones. 32 years ago, when Kondo was just a traumatized 2-year-old orphan who had barely begun to trust her. She'd collected them from a nearby stream and given them to him one by one over those first difficult months, each stone a small gift of love and patience. Kondo had kept them. For 32 years, he had kept them, He held the stones carefully in his massive hands and turned back toward Rebecca. Each step looked like it cost him everything he had left, but he didn't stop. He crossed the enclosure slowly, his eyes never leaving her face. When he reached her, he knelt down with visible effort. Then, with infinite gentleness, he opened his hands and placed the stones, one by one, into Rebecca's palm. Blue, white, amber, rose, every single stone she'd ever given him. Rebecca sobbed openly, clutching the stones against her chest. "You remembered. Oh God, Kondo, you remembered." Kondo made that low rumbling sound again, the vocalization gorillas make when they feel safe, when they feel loved. Then, moving with such care it seemed impossible for a creature his size, he lowered his massive head onto Rebecca's lap. The weight was substantial, but Rebecca welcomed it. She wrapped her arms around his head, pressing her face against his silver-backed fur, and wept. "I'm here," she whispered over and over. "I'm here, baby. I'm not leaving. I promise, I'm not leaving." Behind the glass, there wasn't a dry eye in the observation room. Marcus had his hand pressed over his mouth, his shoulders shaking. Dr. Chen was crying silently. Even the security guard who'd only been there to monitor the situation had tears streaming down his face. "That's love," someone whispered. "That's just love." Dr. Chen stared at the monitors in disbelief. His heart rate is stabilizing, cortisol levels dropping. After 9 days of starvation, his body was shutting down, but now... She shook her head. The bond between them is literally reversing the physiological collapse. I've never seen anything like this. Rebecca stayed in that position for nearly an hour, holding Kondo's head in her lap, singing softly to him, occasionally whispering words of comfort. She could feel his breathing begin to steady, deepen. His body, which had been so tense when she first touched him, gradually relaxed. Finally, Dr. Chen's voice came through a small speaker in the enclosure. "Rebecca, I hate to interrupt, but we need to bring him some food. If he's going to recover, he needs to eat." Rebecca nodded, carefully shifting Kondo's head. He allowed himself to be moved, though his eyes never left her face. Marcus entered with a tray of Kondo's favorite foods: sweet bananas, crisp apples, fresh bamboo shoots. He set it down carefully and retreated. Rebecca picked up a banana and peeled it slowly. "Come on, big guy, you need to eat something." Kondo looked at the banana, then at Rebecca, then back at the banana. For a moment she thought he would refuse. Then, slowly, he opened his mouth. Rebecca broke off a small piece and offered it to him. He took it gently from her hand, chewed slowly, swallowed. Everyone held their breath. After 9 days, would his body even accept food? Marcus watched anxiously. If he rejects it, his stomach might be too damaged. But Kondo swallowed and reached for more. "His body is accepting it," Dr. Chen whispered. It was the first food he'd eaten in 9 days. "Good boy," Rebecca said, her voice thick with emotion. "Good boy, Kondo." She fed him piece by piece, taking her time, letting him eat at his own pace. He never took his eyes off her face, as if afraid she might disappear if he looked away. By the time the tray was empty, Rebecca was exhausted from her overnight journey and the emotional toll of the morning. But when she started to stand, Kondo made a distressed sound. "It's okay," she soothed. "I'm not leaving. I'm just going to sit more comfortably." She settled herself against the trunk of the oak tree, her back supported by the rough bark. Kondo immediately moved to her side and laid his head back in her lap. "I need to talk to Dr. Chen," Rebecca called out. The veterinarian's voice came through the speaker. "I'm here. How long can I stay?" There was a pause. "As long as you need to, as long as it takes." Rebecca looked down at Kondo, at the gorilla who had waited for her, who had kept her gifts for 32 years, who had been willing to die rather than live without hope of seeing her again. "Then I'm staying," she said firmly, "for as long as he needs me." Rebecca stayed for 6 days and 6 nights. The sanctuary set up a small shelter in the enclosure so she could sleep, though she rarely did. When the other gorillas were reintroduced, they approached cautiously. The younger ones brought food and left it near Rebecca, like offerings. The females groomed nearby, but never intruded. Even the boisterous adolescent males moved quietly around their space. "The whole troop is guarding them," Marcus observed. "They recognize the bond." Kondo ate only when Rebecca fed him. He followed her everywhere, one massive hand always touching her leg, her arm, her shoulder, as if to confirm she was still there. On the 7th day, something changed. Rebecca woke to find Kondo sitting several feet away, watching the sunrise independently. That morning, he fed himself for the first time. By the 8th day, Kondo was walking the enclosure on his own, even playing with the younger gorillas. Rebecca knew it was time. She sat with him under the oak tree. "I have to go back to Colorado, but I'll visit every 2 months, I promise." She placed the colored stones back in his hand. "Keep these safe for me, and remember that I love you." Kondo closed his hand around the stones, then pressed his palm against hers, the stones between them. A promise. 3 months later, Rebecca returned. The moment Kondo spotted her at the window, he abandoned everything and ran to the glass, pressing both hands against it, that rumbling sound of joy vibrating through the barrier. Rebecca pressed her hands to match his. "Hi, baby, I told you I'd come back." And he kept the stones safe at the base of the oak tree, checking on them frequently, waiting for her next visit. Because some bonds don't break just because time separates you.
Thank you for listening to today's story. As you know, our channel is facing a difficult moment since YouTube stopped supporting our content, and your help is essential to keeping us going. If you enjoyed this narration, please consider joining our new community family through the link in the description or in the first comment below. As a member, you will enjoy early access to upcoming videos, exclusive bonus stories, and ad-free viewing. Your kindness makes it possible for me to cover production costs and keep telling these amazing stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story. Thank you for being here with me.